CCP updates, EVE Online, October, November. We'll check out all the stuff today on Talking in Stations. Uh, and helping us with that, we have Arcia Elkin from Electus Matari. How are you? Could you hear me?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? Yeah.
Good. And we also have today, we have McLeod, our engineer from Initiative. How's it going?
Hey guys.
And as our guest today, we're very happy to have with us Noraus from Fraternity.
Hey, friends.
And Suitonia. How are you doing, Suitonia?
Doing pretty well.
Great. I hope you guys can help us break down some of the exciting stuff that CCP's put together, and then we'll talk about the war, and then Arcia will tell us about another war you may not have heard of later in the program. Okay, let's get started. First thing we want to cover is the dynamic bounty system, which is not yet in the game, but that's going to have some interesting consequences actually some major consequences. Let's break that down. Suitonia, is this something that you know about? What are the takeaways?
Yeah, so the basic sort of rundown of this is that systems will have their bounty payout either increased or decreased based on the number of activity in that system compared to the rest of the EVE universe. So if you're ratting very hard in a system and it's higher than the average in the universe, and the payouts will go down. It will range from 100% up to 120% as the maximum payout, and it can go down to as low as 50%. So you'll only get half as much bounties if that system has excessive ratting in it.
So it's basically a diminishing returns on ratting. Yeah,
and another thing as well is the bounty, the number of player kills in the system. I'm not sure how CCP is going to do that, whether it's going to be based on value or based on ship kills. I think it'll probably be based on values, because I know Brisk talked to me on Reddit and said that CCP has taken into account of people farming their own alts or something to try and boost it. But basically, if there are player kills happening frequently in a system, then the bounties will also go up. So you get more for ratting in hostile systems or potentially hostile systems.
Because if there's more PvP, the ratting money that you get paid goes up, right?
Yeah. So if you're doing PvE in an area that's dangerous, like Providence, these areas that are close to Empire space, or if you're trying to raise the ADMS in Curious right now in the big war, right? Obviously, you're at a lot more risk than someone who's maybe ratting in the dead end of Tenerifis or something.
Do you think it's going to work to try to spread out where people are in nullsec? Because right now, if you roam null, you have a lot of empty jumps followed by 102 people in a system. So do you think that's really aimed towards spreading people out?
I'm not sure how effective it will be. I think generally, players tend to be very risk adverse, and so I think they might just accept lower ISK rather than risking more. But I think it's a cool system, and hopefully maybe it encourages people to rat outside of super umbrellas. And the good thing too, right, is that CCP's actually put some carrot in this one instead of just stick, which is I think a lot of the problems with some other economy updates that they've done, is that you can actually get more bounties, right? Like if it goes up to 120%, then maybe it encourages someone to maybe risk their carrier or something.
So you actually see carrots in this one. And that's a good point. That right now CCP is in the process of changing gameplay in significant ways, affecting the underpinnings of a lot of gameplay that people do. For instance, ratting and bigger ships and that sort of thing. And when you do that, it is considered a nerf because your gameplay has been nerfed, your income has been nerfed, and so people feel that's just a stick coming from CCP nerfing what they considered legitimate just a few months ago. So you're saying that this has some incentives to make it a little sweeter. So you're going to exchange some gameplay for other gameplay, and hopefully that'll be digested, to go with the metaphor, a bit better by players.
Yeah, it might also help smaller groups out a little more too, because obviously right now most people who want to rat safely, they just join a big group like Pandemic Horde or Winterco or Test Alliance, and those groups, they will have safer space and they'll have big super umbrellas, but they'll probably have lower dynamic bounty systems. So if you join like a smaller alliance that isn't as safe, but it doesn't have as many people, you'll probably be making more ISK to go along with the more risk that you have.
Noraus, you're somebody that has a super umbrella. What do you?
Yeah, we do. I think this change is long due change, and I totally welcome that. It will hurt our MER a little bit for our home region in Noasa, but we don't get our stats by just hiding in a dead end. Oasa is, as far as I can check, it's top 9 region today. For the last 24 hours, it's the most violent regions, one of the. So, yeah, I don't think that will affect us too much. Also, we have other regions we can expand to Whale Silence. I can confirm we have the plan for that region too.
Silent?
Yeah. Well, there won't be another Super Camp Umbrella, but yeah, we plan to move some people over there.
Right. You put a Keep Star down there, didn't you, in Vale?
Yes, in HTech 5 GUI.
Looks like it went down successfully. Is that to provide a home base or security for Fraternity while they operate in Vale?
Yeah, it's a great content system. NC used to try to online one but failed. It's in direct range of JITA. Literally, you can jump further out of JITA to HTech 5. So it's great for the market too. Yeah. And it's next to MPC Geminate. It's another great content source.
So when you say content, what do you specifically mean, or is it a variety of things?
Oh yeah, they are PvP contents, of course. So we house different kind of players. If those are hardcore crappers, you can just crowd and stay behind TP Noasa. Nobody will find you. But if you want some PvP contents too, I think most of our players are at that stage. They tend to get tired of ratting. So it's time for them to move out a little bit. And we have Darkside, we have Tissue, Ingeminate.
Attacking?
Yeah, not actively attacking us, but yeah. We kind of on a friendly blue troll. No, never. It's just like a content farm room. No. Yeah. There's no deal at all.
No deals in place, but there's some good relationships, the good diplomatics, I guess.
I hope so.
Well, that's interesting to me. So it seems to me, this is just an observation from the outside, that you guys are set up pretty well because you have multiple systems to expand from. And I think this works on a system level, right?
What do you mean by a system level? You mean an organization?
Like,
yeah, each individual system is, I guess, the amount of money you get from ratting. Suitonia, you would know better than I. Does it work on a system or constellation level or even region level? This is a system level, right?
That is system, I guess, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's system level.
And you have how many systems under your OASA umbrella?
145, I think. But we don't use all of them. Right.
So you have room to spread out, is what I mean, and still be protected if that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, totally. Well, one thing about this change, people always say, well, like he will encourage small entities. I don't quite think so. I think the big players just will probably bully them out, like I did in Whale Silent. Probably not the best news for them.
Yeah, so they're just hearing it now for the first time.
Yeah, I'm being honest here. Like, John Region doesn't have this issue. It covers so many systems in one single cap umbrella, right? But for other regions, it might not be the case.
Yeah, so watch out, Vale. If you're living there and having a good time, there's a shadow being cast over you, and that shadow is coming from Fraternity's Keepstar.
I mean, it's already completed, so I don't look in, like, probably somewhere in the sec, but yeah.
Okay.
Toilet paper, you're fine. Don't worry about that.
Okay. All right. What's interesting is that, so how do you see this? Is it going to affect you in a good way or a bad way? And you think it's long overdue, this kind of a mechanic change, and you're fine with it.
Imagine you can crawl into the deepest, like farthest end in the universe and nobody can touch you. It's quite annoying, right? It will hurt anyone, but I'm confident we can adapt better against our opponents, competitors. So, of course, I welcome this change. Yeah, it's great.
Right. Okay, so that's the dynamic range. How do you guys, Suitonia and Noraus, how do you guys think this is going to work with ADMs? Because it seems like a contradiction, doesn't it?
I don't know about that. I think in areas where you want to have the ADMs, you don't really care about the ISK ticks all that much.
Yeah.
Oh no.
If you really do an ADM fleet, yeah, you generally don't care about the ISK ratio per tick, and you generally won't use the most efficient routing chip to do that.
Right. I see. So when you're working on ADMs, it doesn't look the same as just ratting in an area.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, and you can also have like some corp programs too, right? Like you give someone like a percentage of their taxes back if they do it in a system where you want ADMs, you know, those kind of programs as well.
I see. So, okay. So the ADMs are probably don't, again, so that you guys understand, the dynamic ratting wants to push people out to spread out, right? Because if you're all in the same place, your profits are going to go down. So that's a push mechanism. CCP also has pull mechanisms, which is to pull people together. And ADMs are kind of like a pull in that you want to rat in a certain area system in order to improve the defensive modifier, which is what the ADM is. And so if you're being pushed out to go make profit, but you need a concentration of people ratting in a certain system, isn't that a contradiction?
I look at it as like an ADM will be like an alliance op and not so much the same as like ratting when you're out ratting by yourself, right? It's like an alliance goal versus an individual goal. Sometimes you have to go to work. Sometimes you have to make money on the side. I don't know.
Sometimes you get to play baseball.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to work for yourself and sometimes you have to work for money.
All right. Like, interesting. Okay.
It's like improving your house versus going to work.
Yeah. You guys have other thoughts on this? I think players are very interested in this and how it's going to work out. And what do you guys, what's your takeaways from it? Do you guys like this or don't like it, or do you have reasons?
I think it's a great change. And as Noraus said, I think it's long overdue.
Right.
Yeah, I totally love it.
Bale?
I think it's a good change. I think it's good to encourage choices when both choices have benefits and cons.
All right. And how does this tie into something that hasn't been announced yet? It's only been alluded to by CCP. It's coming next week. We will see changes to ESS.
Yeah, the counter surveillance system. There's it's on Singularity. We're not sure like how much of that is going to be carried over, but it is getting released in a week, so it's likely it's going to be in the same state. And I believe there's a dev blog coming sometime next week about it. And this is also coming in the same patch as the dynamic bounty system. So I believe you did a show in May with some devs that had that where it was talked about in depth, kind of. Mm-hmm. And like I don't think it's really changed from what the ESS or from the discussion the devs had then. But the takeaway from it is basically the ESS is going to become a mandatory beacon in the system that is in every single upgraded null system. So you don't choose to put it down anymore. It's just always in your system. And it's going to take half of all of the bounties. So if you rat 100 million, then there's going to be 50 million put inside the ESS. And then inside the ESS itself, there's actually two banks. There's a main bank that anyone can take from. And then there's I think it's like a backup bank. Let me see if I can find the wording for it. I think reserve bank, that's it. Where you need to actually use a specific key to unlock it. So
there's a main bank that anybody can take from. So like if I'm in a small gang, I can like gank an Ishtar and then steal half the money they've been making or something?
Yeah, so there are some restrictions on what can get inside the ESS though. So you have to be flying a cruiser or bigger to get inside it, which is interesting. It also disables MJDs and MWDs, and there's a bubble that surrounds it of 75 kilometers. So it's very
like
hard
a
to get
scram
out.
bubble.
Yeah, it's a scram bubble, and it's very hard to get out once you go in there. So even if you bring like a fast afterburner ship in there, like a Sifley issue or something, you're still going to be stuck on the grid for about a minute or so.
Yeah, let's stop right there and emphasize that point. You can't just jump in, grab something, and run out. You need it's a slower process than that. And that's why they've eliminated tiny ships that can move really fast, and they've slowed you down when you go in there, and you can't use propulsion modules to help you get in and out faster.
Only afterburners. It's a scram bubble, right? Okay. But wouldn't that make like the Phantasm really good at grabbing?
Yeah, the Phantasm's going to be very powerful in ESS gangs. I think some people will probably, like some wormhole groups will probably make like ESS fleets to go in and steal it.
Wait, why that ship? Why the...
Because it has the bonus to the afterburner speed, so the afterburner's like as fast as an MWD. You can't scram it.
Yeah, it effectively ignores the bubble, the penalty from the ESS.
Does it have an acceleration gate? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it has an acceleration gate.
Okay.
That's really interesting. I'm going to be interested in how that goes. But only cruisers and not like you can't bring like a interdictor, like a frigate in, right?
No, it's also interesting as well if you're in like a small battle cruiser or battleship gang and you want to get a rule, because if you go inside the Plex, you don't have to worry about people bringing like assault frigates that are going to, or interceptors that are going to hold you down, or you don't have to worry about like E-War frigates or interdictors, those kind of things.
I'm suddenly very excited for this.
Yeah, so if you
it's like a faction warfare Plex, but it scrams you when you jump in. Sorry, Suitonia, I'm cutting you off.
I was going to say, like, if you brought a Harbinger inside it, you wouldn't have to worry about like something like a Jaguar holding you down that you can't track with the guns or something like that. There's also an like the reserve key thing is also kind of interesting. I don't know where the keys are going to be coming from, but basically, like from the ESS takes half of the bounties and it's split into two. Half of it goes into the main bank that anyone can take from. The other half is the reserve bank, and the reserve bank is unlocked with a key. Presumably, that's going to be sold by NPCs. I don't know how you get those. So there will be a cost to unlocking it. So if you're planning on running away, you use the key, and then someone pushes you off, then you're going to lose more money than you probably got from it, right? And also it pays out, I think it pays out to everyone in your fleet in an AoE. So like one ship taking from it is very inefficient with the key. So to get a lot of ISK out of the ESS fast, you need to have a gang in there. And that also stops people from, like putting like, let's say a solo caracal into the ESS while their nano gang waits on the outside. If you want to get a lot of the ISK out fast, you're going to have to put a gang inside the ESS. And I guess it also helps stop people from just taking from the ESS as soon as like a gang is reported, maybe 5 jumps out. So with the current ESS, as soon as you have a gang in intel, people just scoop it up or share from it, and you can't get to them in time before they've already taken it. But with this, you'll have to use a key and sit in there. So if you just have like one alt in a caracal that's just trying to take the ESS before the gang gets to you, you're going to probably waste more ISK on the key than you're going to get out from the ESS. So it also encourages, the people who own the people with the ESS to fight instead of just trying to take it with an alt or something.
So question from Aria in the audience here. So if you don't have keys, that reserve bank cannot be accessed. And that's why that's lost ISK by the ratters?
Yeah, you'll need a key to get that ISK out. So the ISK from the ratters will be locked up there. I'm not sure where the keys are going to come from, but presumably sold by NPCs of some kind.
So essentially, if you're like, let's say you're robbing a bank, you take the money from the teller. That's easy. You just say, give me the money, put it in this bag. But if you want to get into the safe, you need to have these keys or explosives that you bought beforehand. That's my analogy, and I'm sticking with it.
I mean, it works. I think it works.
So
I am like actually really excited about this change. As somebody who roams around in a small gang ML sometimes, I wanna steal money from the crabs.
Yeah, the good thing too is it gives players, I think, a lot more agency to be able to deal with botters as well. The people, because the botters are never going to fight you, obviously, and if you go to like a region where you think there are a lot of botters, you can just take half of their risk from the ESS.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting, and I'll switch gears here because this is pretty clearly an attempt to make the ISK generation and nullsec more at the keys gameplay, so that you're not the big thing is botting that people talk about. This seems to be like both these mechanics seem to be taking away from the power of having your computer do the work while you go somewhere else. What do you guys think of that? Is that true, or?
I believe so.
Because again, that's also tied into the dynamic bounty system, right? The systems that have ship kills in them, they have higher bounties. So in areas like Oasa, where Noraus is from, where they have really active PvP fleets and they always chase you down and kill you, they're going to have better bounties than another area where it's just people who instantly dock up as soon as someone comes in.
What a great point. I didn't think of that. So active defense fleets will actually enhance, or at least balance out the, maybe enhance if you're spread out well enough. That's interesting.
We will still have problem to deal with, like in alliances off time zone. I remember someone mentioned that probably the relationship with Wrecking Crew is drastically distinct to time zones. But now, after the patch, the weaker time zone people will not have any chance to do PvE or be very trouble doing so.
Well, that's a good point. When everything's slow because of time zone issues, what happens then? Because that's usually when you do a lot of grazing, not PvPing. But do we know the time limit, like how those modifiers work on what time scale? Like in the last hour, if there's been activity goes up, or is it a daily thing?
I don't think we know.
Yeah, like when it takes measure of the system, and do the modifiers go up or down? We don't know what those intervals are.
I assume it'll update every hour or something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could just like blitz a system every day and just rotate systems. Yeah,
just hollow it out. Wait till tomorrow, instead of it changing constantly, like every few minutes or every hour. And in order for this to work, it seems like it would have to be a very quick interval, at least an hour or less. Okay, very interesting.
But I would hope the interval would be less, because Eve is really reliant on time zones, right? And you don't want like the later time zones to get screwed a bit.
That's a key piece of information that we don't have. It's how fast the dynamic ratting will adjust. And I think that'll make a difference in strategy on how you attack this thing. But it seems to me like you guys are for it. You like this change, and along with the ESS changes, it'll make for opportunities to square off against thieves or Robin Hood type characters like Arcia. I don't want to call you a thief.
It's fine.
And yeah, so it sounds like you guys are okay with the ESS changes and this dynamic ratting.
Yeah, I think they're all great changes that hopefully make nullsec a lot more fun.
Now yeah, good. You guys talked about this a little bit, but do you already, with the Phantasm that you talked about, Sanchination, right? Is that who?
Yeah, all the Sanch ships have an afterburner bonus, so the afterburners are basically micro warp drives, in speed-wise.
Yeah. Do any of you see other? Do you have other tips for people to look at? Strategies that you're already thinking about?
I mean, it's also going to help brawlers, because a lot of null PvP is focused on kiting and range, and if you have this acceleration gate leading into a scramble, it's going to be a brawl. Like, you can brawl if you get in there first, right? And you just set up, it's like everybody's scrambling when they come in. It's not like they can burn out. Unless they're a phantasm, right?
Yeah, I think most nullsec groups will probably have like some kind of doctrine that they use for ESS, and most people who are doing like small gangs will probably decide to go with a doctrine if they want to steal it before they like filament out or go out the wormhole or something.
But I do think that's also an overlooked part of the change that's really positive, in that there's a lot less reason to brawl in null compared to like faction warfare at low sec, where you have the complexes with the acceleration gates and can force the fight at 0. So I for one, somebody who enjoys brawling, also like that aspect of the change.
All right, cool. Little brawling magnet then. Okay, so this kind of falls into, as we talked about with ratting and super umbrellas and stuff like that. The monthly economic report came out earlier this week for September. It's always a month behind. And we looked at the measurements, and from the looks of it, Noraus' area in Owasso is doing fantastic. Do you want to comment?
Sure. Let's see. I'm not so confident for next month. Like, I think the change will hurt us a lot. But yeah, like I said, it's a welcoming change. We have to endure that.
Yeah, why are you not confident about the next MER?
I mean, for October we should be fine, but I'm really not sure about November after they implement the change.
I see. So these changes you think will affect your monthly economic ratting numbers?
Won't they affect everybody though? How do they affect you in proportion to the other groups out there?
No, I don't think so. I don't believe so. No.
Well, one thing you mentioned earlier when I said, wow, you guys in Owasso are doing great. You're way above Delve, because Delve is kind of shut down at the moment. I don't know if that's the right characterization, but you're way above everybody else. And you said something that was very interesting. You said, it's not that we're way above, it's that everybody's fallen.
Yeah, of course. They moved their Supercapital umbrella away to Delve, but we didn't. We only moved our Titans and Flex. So our supercarriers are still in drone region ratting. That's, I think, probably the most obvious reason.
Yeah. Right. And we checked the numbers to see if that was true, and it kind of, it was true. Like, in fact, Delve actually had higher numbers than you have.
Yeah, when it was at peak time. Yeah, when Goons was at peak time, they have, I believe, 12 trillion per month on a specific month, I think.
Yeah, we looked at 8, but we were picking months at random. But 8 to 12 trillion per month, unbelievable amount of money. And you guys are doing 8, right?
6 trillion.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I'll let you address this, because this is something that comes up all the, we always have people who want to antagonize you, and they're saying botting, and you've made an answer to this already, which we've carried, but you want to address that? People saying that you guys are have a lot of botters, and that's why you're able to make so much.
Do you want to talk about Branch or Owasso?
Let's talk about Owasso first, and then we'll move to Branch.
Okay, sure. I told you that we have a standing fleet, that we have a list of FCs, standing FCs that is scheduled on hours to take out the green lights. So we essentially have 18 hours per day green lights, where people just so confident to take out the super carriers no matter what. Like no matter when I call the green lights, they do believe it. They believe it's safe, and I believe that kind of confidence directly boosts our super carrier umbrella strength. So, yeah, you just have all the chemicals there, and we do have a very strong defensive fleet. If you do roam a lot, and in the end, you probably just want to avoid our region to go for the easier prayers. Like last month, no, actually 2 weeks ago, Harnox, they hot dropped the Nyx and killed it. It was during a green light, so I had to SRP the ship home for the victim. But last week, we killed one Hyper Nyx in our region, and we tanked 7 Nyxes. One Eon or one Nyx was tanking to half armor, but we saved it during green light. So people actually knows that Oasa is not like a easy rental region to be bothered with. I think that helps us a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
As a record, for the record, Oasa is probably one of my least favorite regions to roam in because you guys do always have that really impressive fleet that you're happy to smash me with.
Yeah, take that compliment. Thank you.
So what you're saying is you defend it really aggressively, and that's what allows you guys to be safe to do this.
Yeah, Oasa is always super scary. If you take a filament into Oasa, there's like 2 rapiers already burning to use.
No, like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to Oasa with like a battlecruiser gig and had like Titans dropped on me. It's like, it's pretty funny. It's like, because whenever we roll a filament, we always guess what region it's going to be, and it's like, it's probably going to be Oasa again.
Please don't be that.
Don't be Oasa.
If you use filament in like during a certain hours, like I think after downtime to 1600, that's probably Oasa. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be Oasa. Because we always have a game. Everybody guesses what region it's going to be, and if you're right, everybody pays you $1 million. It's
kind of fun. So the point is, Oasa is not the favorite to go and disrupt Ratters because it's well defended. And that is evidence that you guys are there. And how many people do you have in your alliance now?
Let me check. 15,000.
15,000. Okay. And if we think about Delve at peak, they were at like 20 to 25 because they didn't get to 30,000 until later.
I don't know. Pandemic Horde is at the top with 22. The Goonswarm, they're still like 30,000. Yeah, they purged a lot inactives. Right after the war.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but we're talking 2 years ago when they were making 8 to 12 trillion. We'll have to look at what their population was. I just want to compare the size, right? How many people you have actually ratting. And one other thing before we move to branch, which is a different scenario.
Okay.
I want to deal with this. Is there a racial component to the criticism of botting? Because Fraternity is Chinese or mostly Chinese players. I don't even know if it's mostly Chinese players, but is there a racial component?
90%. Yeah, I would say so, because naturally, as I explained to you, like I will do that more later on branch. In China, if you successfully run an RMT workshop kind of thing on the online business, you can get an average, like above average salary monthly. So there are incentives for the Chinese player to do botting and RMT. That way, people will be more suspicious, like when they look at us, right? It's reasonable, but we try to, straight the names. Yeah. Go ahead.
Same with Russians. They had that same thing. They had that same thing, criticism. Yeah, that they could have. This was lucrative for them to do. It was basically a part-time job, full-time job to be able to bot. So they had that working for them.
Yeah.
As far as criticism, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was thinking about the same. Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, we'll deal with this one too, since we have you here, that Fraternity is funding this war against Delve. Do you want to address that?
I'm not sure if I should say that, but yeah, we do. We did invest 4 keep stars, 5 keep stars in total. The 2 keep stars, the Pandemic Horde dropped. 1 was from test. So test in Delve alone invested 2 keep stars and 1 from Horde. Yeah, but I think we are funding partially. You can say that.
You are funding the war partially because you put up your keep stars.
That's the major form of investment. Yes.
But are you doing like SRP? Are you going beyond the keep star donations? Do you do?
We don't do cross alliance SRP. We don't do that. I haven't heard about. We do talk about like if there's a major Titan fights happen, how are we gonna SRP our Titans and super caps, and we probably will temporarily share some Titan caches, maybe.
Right, because one of the strategies in nullsec warfare is to attack the poorest part of a coalition and break them off because they can't afford to stay in.
Indeed, yeah.
And so what you do as a defense to that is couple your money together to pay for the poorest guy so that they can stay in the fight. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm, exactly. But it never happened. Like it was a great chance in YZ9, but the server, or they didn't expect that the server would eat the boson damage. So it's kind of pity there.
A pity. Okay. So we'll move to Branch. Tell us about Branch, why that's a different situation.
So we had a pretty much failure, I think 4 years ago, right? Do you remember the pie chart of shame? That Fraternity Treasury was our previous rental program. It was like second or third biggest amount of band players combined since its creation. And we were pretty young at that year. So and then we review our rental program, and I started picking up the botting corps, which is pretty hard for any players without the knowledge. It's getting there, so we redo our rental programs. We duplicated that in Branch, and now I'm pretty confident that usual botting corps won't survive more than 2 weeks in Branch, but they keep coming back. Exactly the same reason I told you before, because it's super rated. But we just keep kicking them out and report to CCP. I can say we have a pretty good sense now on how to identify a boarding corps.
And you take, when players report to you that, hey, you have a botter in your rented space, do you take that seriously?
If they can bring up some form, any form of evidence, like they give us a screenshot, give us, better yet, give us a clip, and we definitely look into that. Yeah.
All right. But is that technically because Branch is further away from you? Is it harder to patrol that, or is it just as easy?
If you have someone, if you have someone dedicated to patrolling around the space, it's not as hard. The hardest part is that we have pretty limited amount of tools. As a player, we can look directly into the system. Even though I request ESI check for every rental corps, which is not very usual among the renting systems, I request that. I will look into your corp wallet. If you have some very suspicious transaction, like you keep sending ESC out to various people, then I have a pretty good guessing that you are actually RMTing out, right? But that's pretty much the only two methods we have to identify a boarding corps, by ESI and by some video clips evidence.
All right, got it. All right, well, listen, thanks for taking the time out. We took a little time out to address these issues. They come up. We just want to make sure that people get enough information to be satisfied and stop the criticisms. They may not.
Well, they won't go away, but yeah.
They may not go away, but they've been addressed. And so people that they try to say, hey, fraternity's this or that, somebody can say, well, I saw him on a program and that's what he said. So that's why we give that platform. We give that platform to anybody who wants to explain behavior. Okay, so let's move on, though, from the economic report over to this new section, Howling Intradictors and Combat Scepter Changes.
All right, so as everybody knows, the Saber is really widely used compared to the other three interdictors, because for a variety of reasons. But the 27th, the Eris, the Flycatcher, and the Heretic will be receiving a number of updates, which is really exciting. So to read over the changes, the Eris is getting a CPU increase of 40 teraflops, so that's 250 teraflops from 210. Power grid increase up to 71 megawatts. Max velocity increase, signature radius decrease, mass decrease. And they are getting, the Ares is getting 5% to small hybrid turret rate of fire and 15% reduced mass penalty from armor plates. The Flycatcher is getting a slight CPU increase, and it is getting 10% damage to missile kinetic damage instead of the explosion radius, and 10% shield increase per level, making it really, really tanky compared to the other Dictors shield wise, and the heretic is getting a similar 110% armor HP per level instead of its missile velocity, and it's also getting a power grid and a CPU increase. And I think this can be really good to get some of the other dictors used. I think my expectation is that the Eris is still going to lag behind, but the Flycatcher and the Heretic are going to have like real reasons to use them in the bigger fleets now. I'm currently a proponent of the Heretic for small gangs, but I think it'll help the Flycatcher and the Heretic be more used all throughout EVE, in nullsec at least. I think it's going to take away one of the Heretic's niches in low sec with the super snipey light missiles, though, it's a very, very niche, but that's something that's probably going away.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think this change is going to make a lot of the other dictors more viable in most situations. I still think the Saber is going to be pretty strong, and I still think most nullsec groups will probably still prefer to use the Saber, even over the Flycatcher with the new bonuses that it has. But yeah, the Heretic is going to be really, really strong in armor brawl comps now, because you can get about 27,000 effective hit points on it, which is really huge for a destroyer hull. Yeah. And you can also do like a much stronger like probing fit. So I think like Saber is still going to be like the go-to, although the Flycatcher is going to be a strong alternative, and the Heretic was already the like best probe launcher dictor, and it's going to be like really strong in brawling armor comps now as well.
Because staying alive is important for a dictor, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, generally, especially in this like heavy assault cruiser meta, like Sabers basically just die as soon as they bubble something. And,
exactly, like vanish.
Yeah, keeping Heretics alive even with 27,000 EHP is still going to be difficult, but
it's less difficult than it would have been before this change.
Yeah, there's also gonna be a web bubble that's coming in too.
The wobble.
Yeah, the wobble.
The wobble.
That's a web bubble. Let's talk about that.
So that thing it's not like a traditional bubble where you just launch it. It launches like a probe that like waits a moment and then explodes, providing an AOE that stays on everything that's in that radius. So it's not like a traditional bubble, but it's really interesting.
Is it kind of dropped, or is it actually projectile like a bomb?
Yeah, it's more like a bomb that doesn't move. You drop it in place and it explodes after 3 seconds. So it's like kind of like a depth charge. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I was thinking of mine. Remember mines? Go ahead.
We have the space submarines, so depth charge actually works really well for that. Space submarines.
Yeah, I think they used to have mines. Like you could actually plant mines in space.
They used to have mines. I have some of them in a station still. You can't use them, but they're fun.
But I mean, this mechanic would work for that, wouldn't it? Like you drop something and it's a radius of damage. But anyway, tell us about this this bubble of a web.
Yeah, it's a very, very long effect, but it's pretty hard to land because it only has a 10-kilometer radius, so you more or less have to be on top of people to land it. And it also explodes pretty quickly too. Explodes after 3 seconds, so you can't really like set it up in advance. You kind of just have to be on top of the enemy fleet to use it. And it's pretty weak in that it's only a 30% web, but it is an AoE effect, so it is quite strong in that regard, and it does last for 30 seconds. So it is a pretty long effect. Like if you hit an enemy fleet with it, they're going to be webbed down for quite a while.
Sure, and they can get hit again before they come out of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it doesn't stack in the same way that web stack. Getting hit by it. Yeah, it just refreshes it. It's the same as like the super carrier evil weapons or command bursts.
So you won't be able to slow a ship down any further, but you will extend how long he's webbed.
Yeah. So if you if you drop a charge and you drop a charge again, you can refresh the web on it, but you will never web them more than 30% with the AoE ability.
Why do you think there's a 3-second delay?
Maybe to burn yourself out of it if you drop it as you're burning.
Yeah, this affects you.
You have a slight
It'll
chance
affect you if you're in the range, just like your bubble affects you, right?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be very powerful in gate camps, though. Drastic said that you won't be able to escape gate campers anymore, but I don't think this would be particularly that strong in gate camps because like I said, it takes 3 seconds to go off. So, if you jump into a gate camp and you crash gate, like by the time you're webbed by the bubble, like, in most cases, that you're probably already webbed and locked and webbed by something like a hyena or a remote sensor boosted vigilant or Hugin or whatever instead, right? So
especially since it's only a 10-kilometer radius. I mean, you have 10-kilometer web on a normal ship, right? So it's not any different from having like an interlocker with a web.
Yeah, and if you decide to burn away from the gate instead of crashing the gate, I doubt they would be able to hit you with it.
Yeah.
People are asking, what if you're cloaked? Does this affect you?
Yeah, while you're holding gate cloak, you can't be hit by it. Same with smart bombs and bombs and everything else.
What if you're in a co-ops? Off gate.
I'm pretty sure you can get hit if you're using a ship cloak rather than the gate cloak.
Do we know
everything else hits you. Right.
Well, do we know if this works like a boost or will this decloak you?
I don't think it will decloak you if you get hit by it.
So like smart bomb damage doesn't decloak you if you get hit by it.
Yeah, same with the other E-War supercarrier weapons, where you can get hit by the ECM burst while cloaked the supercarrier weapon, and it doesn't actually decloak you, but it can still break your lock, even though you're cloaked.
Oh, interesting. So but that's the weird thing about being cloaked. Some things will decloak you and some won't. Well, every time I run into a bubble, I always get decloaked. Maybe that's just me being unlucky.
That's because people leave stuff at the trash at the edge of the bubble, because when you fall into it from like a drag bubble, there's usually a can or something there. They leave there to decloak you.
Wow. I'm just terrible at cloaking. I don't, but that's, I've heard of that, but I don't know if they always do that. Okay. So that's interesting. This web bubble, this exciting to you guys? What do you think?
It's a cool.
I'm not concerned that we
expect it to be used a lot.
But we might not see any afterburner doctrine in NASEC anymore. Think of 9 years, Z-Lots. It might just completely go.
You think Z-Lots are going to suffer from this?
Yeah, basically anything that's rely on afterburner speed to reduce incoming damage, it will suffer. If you get hit by one bubble, you will get hit multiple, and you probably never will get out until your fleet dies, basically, or the dictator dies out.
So this is an anti-afterburner tool that'll make afterburner comps bad.
In NASEC, though.
In NASEC only, yeah. So they'll still be around in NASEC.
Oh, that's a good point. What do you think, Suitonia?
I mean, it's an interesting option. I think CCP want to make fights more bloody, so it's a bit harder to run away. But I mean, the current metagame of MWD heavy assault cruisers might get reinforced a bit more with these bubbles. So we'll see.
Right. So that's Howling Intradictors. They're getting their update, but there's a second part to this one.
The combat scepters are getting a bonus to overheating their MWDs. So that's the Crusader, the Claw, the Raptor, and the Tyrannus.
What can they do?
So right now, there was an update to them a few months ago, or no, at the end of last year, I think, the Howling Interceptors update that gave the combat scepters a lot more damage and such. But I guess they're still not being used a lot. Basically, what this means is that these combat scepters can get moving really, really, really fast compared to even like the fleet scepters. So they're not bubble immune, but they can burn through stuff a lot faster than the other ones will be able to. This
kind of negates them from these web bubbles, doesn't it? Like if you get hit by a web bubble and you can overheat your afterburner to 100%.
I mean, it's going to be hard to hit something that's moving at like 9,000 meters per second with a 10-kilometer radius web bubble, right?
But it only moves that fast when it's overheated, right?
Yeah.
So it's only like a temporary situation where you're moving.
Yeah, but once you like get close enough, you don't have to overheat anymore. So like they'll be really good at like running out and grabbing stuff before they get away.
Yeah. I've heard this will be used for bookmarking on a grid for bigger fleets, something like that.
I don't know about that because frigate MWDs burn out after 3 cycles of heat damage, so you can only really like safely heat them for 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds if you don't get the RNG on the first MWD cycle.
Yeah, they burn out fast.
Should I be buying like a ton of paste or building a ton of nanite paste, whatever it is?
I don't think so. Frigate MWDs are really cheap to repair.
I hope that we see like a comeback of the combat scepter gangs, because after the Howling Interceptors update last year, I started taking out gangs of Crusaders, and with overheated conflag, they did like 400 DPS per Crusader. I mean, they die in like a second, but like the amount of damage these things can put out is really, really nuts. And even if they're not bubble immune, they are quick, and I have a lot of fun when I bring out a combat scepter gang.
Yeah, NC used to have, they weren't interceptors, they were assault frigates, I think. It was a Piranha comp, which was just
assault frigates are really good too, like Harbies and Retributions are really, really, they'll chew through anything.
Yeah, and that's what they did. They were piranhas. They would chew, a bunch of them would chew through some hulls and, be very mobile. And I wonder if that will shift to interceptors. Since after, you're right, that combat interceptor change, I remember people saying that like interceptors were fun again to go out and solo with or something.
I just like, you have like a gang of like 10, 15 people, just combat scepters. You can chew through quite a bit with it, and you're not putting out a giant amount of money into the fleet, so you don't have to, you're going to whelp the whole fleet eventually, right? But it doesn't really matter that much, because they go down hard.
Yeah. Noraus, do you have anything to add to the combat interceptor speed up?
Not really. I'm not so familiar with that, but I agree it has a pretty high DPS if you glass cannon feed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're seeing is this is the test server that McLeod is on. So he's showing us some of the stuff going on there. All right. So that's Howling Interceptors. Sorry, that's Howling Dictors. I don't want to take away from
Howling Scepters was last year.
Yeah, that was last year, right? That was January, wasn't it? So almost a year.
Yeah. All right.
I think it was the first quarter. I don't remember.
It was either the end of last year or the beginning of this year.
All right. The next big one is called VAT Out of Hell. And this is changes to the supercarriers. Do you want to explain those? Or should I? I don't know if you deal much with.
I don't deal much with them.
Yeah. Well, Suitonia, do you know these?
I know what the change is roughly about. I don't own a super though.
Okay,
Really?
so basically what's happening, the Wyvern and the Aeon fighter damage bonus is going to be increased to 7.5% with a 10% increase in heavy fighter HP, a light fighter speed reduced by 10%, light fighter signature increased by 10%. So they're nerfing light fighters a bit and giving a buff to the heavy fighters. The supercarrier SMB capacity is going to be increased from 5 meters to 5 million to 2.5 million. So they're going to be able to hold more ships, twice as many ships as they could before, which is going to go well with this clone bay they have. So basically you'll be able to save your clones in a supercarrier and respawn or jump to the supercarrier and just spawn back on grid in one of the ships from the maintenance bay. So it'll get people back into fights faster when they die, because they can come out of a ship in the supercarrier from the ship maintenance bay.
Yeah, just as a program note, I don't know why they put SMB. Not everybody knows what SMB is. They put ship maintenance bay there. That would be a little clear. And then they reversed it. They said increased to 5 from 2.5. And that totally threw me off when I was reading it live for the Daily Show. But
Yeah.
yes, it's essentially doubled.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be. I think that change is kind of geared towards increasing the number of destroyed ships in a fight, right? Because if you can push a button and jump back into the fight in another ship, everybody's going to want to get right back in there. And
well, you have to. I think we didn't mention this, but you have to take a booster. You have to take some kind of a potion to allow you to do it as well. That's the key to being able to do it. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's like a filament of some sort, or not a filament, but a booster that you have to take in order to get into that state. There's a couple things here that are interesting, and Noraus and Suitonia, you can interrupt me if you want to jump in, but you can only do this in local, so you have to be in the same system with the supercarrier, and you have to be in the same fleet. And that's not how supercarriers work these days. They're usually in their own fleet, and they don't want anybody else in them.
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably just use like a specific support like supercarrier if you plan on using this ability, like a Wyvern or Aeon most likely, with like max tank that sits on grid, and its whole purpose is to just have doctrine ships like, I don't know, Feroxes, Munins, whatever. So when people die, they can instantly respawn.
Yeah, so by the way, that booster, it's a new booster, and it's called the Nano Heuristic Clone Mapper. And so that booster will be necessary for this sort of thing. And I think you're right. They'll take one supercarrier and say, okay, this is our respawn point on the field. So put that in a different thing. And then the rest of the supercarriers will still be doing fleeting up together and whatever else.
I think they're updating them to the size they should be, to the model size of the supercarriers. That's something I heard. So because the supercarriers weren't correctly scaled compared to the other ships, they needed to be bigger. And that's why like the Aeon suddenly got bigger a little while ago.
It says here doubling in size, and I think we've seen that with the Aeon slip up the other month. Yeah,
so they're going to be a lot bigger on field visually wise, because they're supposed to be that big, like in comparison to the other ships.
Well, scale matters, right? At least with smart bombs, the model size actually makes a difference.
Lot, yeah.
And I think in bumping too, does it matter?
Yeah, it's going to be going to make move ops with supers more painful, right? Because they're going to bump off gates and each other more often.
Yeah, that'll be, and when they bounce, it's no joke. I think in FZ9 or F9Z, whatever it was, we saw a Titan bump and it was going like 6,000 kilometers per second. Just it hit the station and continued to bounce. So bouncing is a real thing, and it's very dangerous for super capital pilots when they're not in a huge fight where there's too much going on to pay attention to them. But that reminds me, by the way, disconnects. Noraus, there's something I'm going to interrupt this little section for this one thing that you did. Mm-hmm. You saved one of your guys. Like, if you can imagine, I'm talking to the audience here, a soldier is pinned in a foxhole and he's getting bombarded. And here comes his sergeant jumping in the foxhole with him to grab him and save him. And that's essentially what you did to one of your Titans during that Keepstar battle, the first one that we had, right?
FWST. Yeah, we had a DC disconnected Titan, and when he came back, he's already half armor, and with no link, no active modules. So yeah, Horde scanned it down and landed the first Sino before the Sino inhibitor is online. So we dropped a couple Drats and Flaxes on him, but it was barely. He got into structure for sure, like 97% structures, 6% armor. So I ordered Titan and Noraus to jump in and use his Phenom to boost the armor up. Yeah, it's quite excited at the end.
That's an amazing story. So the Phenom probably made the difference, right? That phenomena effect, I think it is.
Yeah, he gave 30% armor. So you can see visually the armor pumps up. Yeah, totally.
Was that guy pretty nervous?
He's pretty grateful afterwards. Other than that, he sounds pretty normal. Yeah. We some FCs might not agree, might not agree jumping another Titan because the situation was already a mess over there. I jumped in without telling anyone, and well, it saved everyone. Yes, I had to, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the great plays of this year actually is that, and it was not very well reported because it was in the middle of a huge fight. But sometimes these acts of, like, we'll call it Eve heroism, they only get talked about by a few people that heard about it or knew the details. Obviously, this was pretty secret, but it really deprived. Not only did it save your guy, but it deprived the Imperium at the time with a talking point, with like a counter win, because they kind of that fight didn't go very well for them, let's say. But and it would have been even better had they killed a Titan. And so you saved that one right at the last second, which is pretty amazing how you did that.
Yeah, Cass saved one Nyx, I think, during the same fight. But we lost a Hell or two Hells during the second FWST Keepstar.
Yeah. So anyway, that story needs to be written because I love that story. That's the kind of stuff that is rare and really interesting. So, like, I love the idea of a sergeant jumping in and saving his guy. That's incredible loyalty to your members. They're not, because I can imagine in NC Dot, if I was dying, I don't know who would save me.
Oh, Vince would. Don't say that.
I'll save you, Matterall. I'll save you.
No.
With my Harbinger. It's fine.
Yeah, no, I don't know what other leader would just in the middle of a fight say, I'm going to grab this guy. Hold on a second. They might. Yeah, but who knows?
I can't tell you how many ships I've whelped trying to save somebody who did something stupid.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out either, right? None of you look really bad.
Doesn't always work out.
If Noraus had jumped in a second Titan and lost it, that would be
and obviously disconnecting's not doing something stupid, but like as an aside point, not all rescue ops go well, but when they do, it feels really good.
Yeah, true. Vince is a good sergeant, so you're right. He probably would have jumped in. All right, so I'm sorry I derailed, but I really needed to tell that story. At some point, I want to write it down and memorialize it. Back to super carriers. So they're going to grow. They're going to double in size. They're going to get the ability to become respawn points for players that take a potion, or that's just our way of saying it, but take some kind of a booster.
You have to get high before you can jump to the carrier.
Right, get it. Hype up.
And that change is going to be on the 10th of November, it looks like.
Right, so that's coming. Also, there's something here. The fighters are going to be losing some speed, right? Because I've heard that light
fighters are losing 10% speed. So that's a big deal.
And their signatures increased by 10%. This is a nerf to fighters, isn't it? Light fighters.
Light fighters, yes. It's a nerf to light fighters.
So we heard that the reason this nerf is here is because light fighters really chew up everybody. Like, they're incredibly powerful right now. Like, they're hard to catch, they're hard to shoot, and there's so many of them that carriers essentially can chew through subcaps way too fast. And so this is an attempt to balance that out a little bit. It also hurts ratting carriers because the NPCs now have a better application of damage to your little fighters.
Does that apply to structure fighters too?
It's light fighters. I don't know if it applies to structure fighters.
Because the stand-up light fighters.
By the way, I just posted in chat, and I'll put it in the show notes, the video of Noraus saving his comrade.
Yeah, it's from Initiative.
Initiative POV? Okay, cool. Right, because they probably thought they were going to get a kill. Ouch. Okay, so light fighters getting a little bit of a nerf to make them a little more competitive against subcaps. I think subcaps are going to have a little better time with them as they have in the past. So I think that's a big change. And The heavy fighters, though, will get a 10% increase in hit points. And for the Wyvern and the Aeon, they get 7.5% damage increase. Those two together are pretty good for super carriers, especially the Wyvern and the Aeon. Do you have any comments on those changes?
I mean, seems like a good change, right? Because Nyx and Hells are used a lot more than Wyverns and Aeons, so giving some love to the two supers that don't get used so much is a good change.
Yeah. All right. Well, one other change, and that is something that's kind of been a stealth change: ice belts. Suitonia, tell us about ice belts.
Yeah, so they now have a chance to just not spawn at all at downtime.
What? Like, well, explain that, because that has huge consequences.
Yeah, so I think in the last dev blog that they posted, which was about a week and a half ago now, they said something like reduce the chance for ice belts to spawn or something, and everyone was confused about what that meant, because ice belts are always present in systems that have ice belts, and they just respawn 4 hours after they get mined out. Well, what the change actually is that there's actually no change to the respawn mechanics. If there's ice in the system and you mine it out, it will always respawn 4 hours later. But now it seems that downtime, there's like some kind of check to see if ice is going to spawn in that system for that day, and it can just not spawn.
So I think the patch note was that it's lower to 80% chance. Does that mean 80% chance to spawn?
It seems lower than 80% because Volta are living in Fade right now, and usually there's 2 to 3 of our 5 ice belts that are missing. So I assume that for the most part that it's random. I don't think it's regional based. I think it's just, it seems like across the whole game there's about a 50% chance that a ice belt just won't spawn at all for that day.
Yeah, we feel the same. It's about 50% overall reduction.
That tell us about what that means, Noraus. Like, what 50% reduction of iced availability?
Exactly. Ice availability in the whole game. We're still trying to figure out a mechanism of this respawning. Right now, it doesn't seem to follow any pattern at all.
Well, again, when CCP, this is all part of the ICE resource redistribution update that you just saw on screen. And one of the things that CCP commented about this update was that this was the bottom. It wouldn't get any worse than this. So maybe they've stripped out ice, 50% ice now.
I did notice a lot of the Triglavian invasions did target ice systems too in high and low sec.
To take away, you mean?
Well, yeah, a number of ice systems have been moved to POCVEN where they still have ice. So that's an interesting change.
I wonder if they're affected by these changes. Do we know?
I mean, they would have the same mechanics as any other ice in the game. Okay. So yeah.
So they would also see reductions. But the point is that because this is the baseline, the worse that it gets, that there may be incentives built in later to help the ice quantity or availability go up, like some kind of new mechanic that allows it to spawn in different places, maybe part of missions, or who knows how they redistribute the ice. So, but for right now, what you should know is there's a 50% shortage, and that's why you're seeing massive price spikes on isotopes, which are an ice byproduct. And those are necessary for fueling structures, but also for traveling. That's the big one. We didn't know this was going to happen. It's not really a surprise. We told people, like, get in ice products before this thing hits, because we were told that on the test server they had disappeared and stuff. So if you were listening to Talking in Station's daily shows, you would know that was a good time to purchase, and you've seen the prices already spike.
Do you think it's a play to try to make the cost of power projection moving around capitals be more expensive? With the isotopes being more expensive.
What do you think, Suitonia?
I don't know. I mean, most ice products are just cheap, right? Because there's like tons of stockpiles, like liquid ozone and heavy water are just, you know, stupidly cheap. It's just like a pain to move it, basically, because you just have so much of it.
Yeah, especially ozone. There's a ton of that all over the place, I think. Normally anything that affects ice will affect travel and power projection, but ice was so available for so long. They might be just absorbing a lot of those stockpiles until they get it to a point where they want to like calibrate it.
I mean, that's a similar thing they did with the ore to begin with in the earlier scarcity phase, right? Is they just reduced the amount of some of the ores that were spawning, and then they actually changed the DNA of the ores later. So I wonder if CCP will like in the next patch when they do this, if they're going to be like changing, you know, what ice gives what products, etc.
Yeah, so we'll see about that. Okay. Oh, by the way, the supercarrier module is called the Tactical Capsuleer Recloner. It's on CC now, and we've seen some pictures of it. I'll see if I can put a picture of it. There's stats associated with it too, but we're not sure if those will be final stats. I'll just put that in there. You guys can look at that. Okay, let's get to some player news. That's all the stuff that's coming from CCP for October and November. Now remember, this is about the time that eVegas happens, right about now. So a lot of the stuff that you're seeing would have been announced at an eVegas, probably.
Yeah.
So let's go to, that we can let Noraus go if he wants to, but well, let's first hit Twitch versus Eve. Ford, do you want to talk about that?
So just a quick note that this Saturday Halloween is going to be the Twitch versus Eve event. You're going to see a lot of streamers streaming all day on Halloween. All the streamers are going to be fleeting up together. Streamers, CCP, ISDs are going to be roaming around in multiple different fleets, led by upwards of 7 different FCs this year, which is the most that Twitch versus Eve has ever had. I'll be running one of the fleets myself, so you'll see a lot of fighting with all these known names on Twitch this Saturday, and I encourage people to check it out. Suitonia, are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'm working the morning, but I'll see. I'll probably make some of the later ones.
It's always a good time, and it might be a chance to get some CCP corpses.
There's also the Halloween event, right? Isn't there a...
Yeah, I think the Crimson Harvest coming, if it's anything like the last year, there was an increase in drop rate for, what was it? It was like a week or something. It was 100% drop rate last year, and people were doing all the weird stuff by whelping like tournament ships inside of haulers and such because they would drop 100% of the time. I think they're going to nerf that a little bit. I heard a lower drop rate than 100%, so people
yeah,
it's
on Hobo Leaks. It's a 90% drop rate. There's also a Blood Raider mobile tractor unit that specifically only collects corpses. So there's a corpse MTU coming, which is really cool.
Corpse MTU, yeah.
That's funny. People have been wanting holds specifically for corpse for a long time on ships.
So the Blood Raider ships have corpse holds, right?
Oh, they do, right?
Yeah, the Blood Raider ones. But
funny.
But yeah, Halloween's gonna be an interesting day for Eve.
Okay, so it's now 90%. It's not 100% drop, but explain why people would stick a tournament ship inside of a...
All right, so they put a tournament ship inside like of a hauler. They kill the hauler. They get the value on their kill board for killing the tournament ship. They just pick up the tournament ship that 100% drops, right? And it's basically just like the saddest of sad kill board padding. Right? Yeah. Like people who take Z-kill way too seriously. Or maybe they're just breaking it for fun, right? A lot of people probably just breaking it for fun, yeah.
If they have a tournament ship, they're probably just doing it for fun.
Right, like, I mean, a lot of weird people have tournament ships. I mean, I have a silver magnate, so, and
You're not weird. No,
I'm definitely weird.
No.
All right.
You've earned it. You're a PvPer, you've earned it.
I earned it by losing at the tournament.
Okay. Last thing. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we're going to lose Noraus because he's on a different time zone.
Later.
Thanks, Noraus. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let me talk about the war real quick. We'll just get through that, and then we'll talk about a different war that is more interesting. Unless you have anything else on the Crimson Harvest.
That's all I have. Sometimes I would watch the in-game news. Sometimes Blood Raiders do some evil stuff around the Crimson Harvest time.
Oh, so watch out. See if something
Yeah,
happens.
because I mean, what was it, a couple of years ago during the Crimson Harvest is when they started with all the bombing of planets that led to a lot of interesting events in the news, like the Kaha and the Becca events, which were some of the most interesting RP related events that have gone on in the last couple of years. But I would watch the in-game news if you're the type who's interested in that. Blooders do some weird blooder stuff a lot around this time.
Yeah, they get daffy drinking so much blood. Ugh. All right, let's talk about, speaking of blood, let's talk about what's going on in Delve and some of the updates on the war there. As you know, like last week, the Pappy forces were able to anchor a Keep Star, and through this bubble wrap, they call it. It was a strategy that worked, and they were able to actually anchor it and then online it. And in doing so, they gave themselves, basically Delve was breached, and they gave themselves an operating base inside of the region itself. So now Imperium has to defend the region with the enemy inside the region. Now it is NPC Delve. I don't know if that makes a huge difference, except, I don't know, that it's not owned by Imperium. But since then, we've seen a few days of rest and then a massive attempt to start turning over iHubs, infrastructure hubs. The infrastructure hubs are essentially permission to build infrastructure in a system. So you can build roads in the form of bridges. You can shut doors in the form of cynojammers. And these are very important to strategic operations. So you want to control the infrastructure in a system. So those hubs are what control it, and they control the defensive nature of the system as well. So there's a lot of advantages, and flipping those is what warfare is these days for the most part. It's not really assailing structures so much. It's not really assailing territorial claim units at all, basically. So Pappy went to work on mostly period basis. I think they flipped 17 or 27 iHubs there, which is a lot. It's the majority of the system. But in Delve itself, which is where the war really has intensified, they flipped a constellation called WTAC-4. And I think they successfully flipped the entire constellation now. They initially did 6 out of 9 systems. Now they've probably done all of them. And they've extended what they're attacking out into Delve proper, as you can see. So they're starting to move in. I think the next week or two will be massive assaults on infrastructure hubs. Again, once that iHub goes down, Imperium bridges go offline. The structures that are associated with infrastructure go into low power, I believe, and are easy to destroy. They're certainly not usable after that point. But that doesn't mean that Pappy can actually build their own cynojammers or their own bridges. They have to wait until the ADMs mature up to level 3, and that takes 30 days. So after 30 days, they'll be able to put in their own cynojammers, and this is how that works. If Pappy were to take over a system and win the iHub, and there's an Imperium Keepstar in it, they would essentially Pappy would put up their own iHub and protect it, because if it gets destroyed, then they have to start the clock over again for 30 days. After 30 days, they are able to put down a cynojammer for that one system. And at that point, you have an ability to open and close the gate when you want in a 5-minute interval. Sorry, it used to be 5 minutes. I think it's Used to be 30 minutes, and now I think it's 5 minutes. So essentially, you can use your own super capital ships, but you can block the enemy's super capital ships. And that kind of advantage allows you to take down structures like a keep star or anything else without a lot of risk. So that's why these things are really important in the future. Okay, 35 days. Thank you. And a correction, low power is only based on fueling a citadel, not based on iHub ownership. Really? Okay. So somebody told me that recently, and I didn't know that, but I just took it for granted that was true. I thought Ensemble X gates or something turned to low power mode or something like that. But it doesn't matter. The point is they can't be used, and they really can't be salvaged. There's no point in salvaging them. All right, so that's what's going on in Delve. So again, Keepstar got anchored. We wondered what advantages that was going to do, and there's two advantages. You're seeing one of them. One is proximity to iHubs and the flipping of those, because now you can escalate within jump range of the areas that you were doing work in. So if you're fighting in systems that are within the jump range of YZ9, which is where they're at, where that Keepstar went up, they can protect that effort with super capital escalation dominance. In other words, they've got their cannons on the hill, and if anything's going wrong, they can escalate to a point where they can bring everything to bear, and that allows for a lot more aggressive attacking of areas. Okay, but that is what's going on in Delve and Quarius. There are some other things, right? Like I know that a Horde fleet got wiped out by smart bombing Praxis from Elo Knight. That was pretty cool to watch. And I think the Initiative had some victories in there. I don't know what it is.
The Initiative took out a Fortizar and Hopip, right?
That's right, Hopip.
Yeah.
Which is an old staging. I mean, at the beginning of the war, that would have been a huge piece of news, but it's an old test Fortizar that's been there since the beginning of the war, over 100 days ago. But, it's a victory. There's some stuff going on there. Okay, but let's talk about a different war, Arcia.
All right, so I've started looking into some wars and notable fights that have happened outside of the null blocks. And there's actually a pretty interesting little conflict going on in High Sec right now. So everybody knows Usher Khan, the Minmatar faction warfare group with the ticker Unity, attacked the Amar group Kimi Harar. They attacked their market Fortizar in Tanu in the Amatar Mandate. They were put up to the task by a Blood Raider loyalist who Kimi Harar their ticker is LUMEN. So they were put up to the task by a Blood Raider loyalist who LUMEN had been hitting the structure of in Tanu. But now the Minmatar group came after the Amar group's Fortizar. And the Amar group, who had previously had Hell Dawn hired against them by the Blood Raider to no avail, has gotten this bigger Minmatar group to attack them. And there was about a 100-person fight in the system the other day because LUMEN had some allies in the war. They're close allies of the Ishak Rata Enforcement Directive, which are a Kaldari group that normally live in Syndicate, and the Phoenix Naval Systems, which are a high and low sec mercenary group that live in Galente space. Phoenix Naval Systems decided to help LUMEN because of all the work LUMEN did during the Triglavian Wars against the Triglavians around the Four Empires. But it culminated in a fight for the armor timer of the Fortizar yesterday. I did a recording of it that I might release at some point. But Usher Khan actually started out the fight really, really well because they had cruise foons and they were successfully kiting the LUMEN brawling fleet. But once the allies of LUMEN started piling in, LUMEN got a good ping onto the kiting foons after they got distracted by all of the allies and the Usher Khan anchor went down. And it was just a really fun fight to watch because you don't see a lot of 100-person fights in High Sec to this degree. Honestly, I want to personally hear about any I would encourage people to send me any information on interesting high, low, and NPC nullsec conflicts that are outside of the blocks that are happening, because I want to try to highlight some of these smaller fights, because I think they have like a really interesting narrative and some interesting fights that we don't always get to see, because the big 6,000 people fights always shine so brightly.
I love that title. To me, that sounds like a perfect show title, Outside the Blocks.
But one of the really notable parts about the fight is that Phoenix Naval Systems deployed a fleet of Stormbringers, the Econ ship, and they were actually really, really effective against the Typhoons, because they hit out from range. Those things are really, really tanky, and they did a lot of damage. Like, I am actually convinced by the Storm Baby, and I started training into it.
The Storm Baby or the Stormbringer?
Stormbringer, but I'm calling it the Storm Baby.
That's the cruiser size Econ ship.
Yeah, I think the cruiser one is actually the best one. I think the frigate and the battleship could definitely use some more help, and they could all use a bit of utility, but I think the cruiser side is actually really good.
I'm convinced, because that's my favorite name in EVE Online.
Stormbringer?
I don't know if anybody's old school D&D player, but remember Elric and Stormbringer? Like, his sword was called Stormbringer. It was this black vorpal blade or something.
I'm just interested in watching if this war escalates, or if the numbers the Usher Khan has went against push them out, because honestly it was really, it took a lot of guts to actually attack that Fortizar's armor timer when they were outnumbered like that, and they did really good at the start with kiting the Lumen brawling fleet, but when the numbers started pouring in, Lumen was able to get a good ping, like I said. So Usher Khan has a lot to be proud of, that they were willing to try to take that fight. And I think that the other side has a lot to be proud of, because they did have such a show of force that you're going to have to take them. You're going to need some muscle to get into there and attack that Fortizar. So it was really fun to watch. In high sec, you can watch a fight with just like a crucifier that locks out to 400, because if they shoot you, they get concorded, right? So it was really easy to observe the fight.
That's always my favorite, to bring in, and I was hoping CCP would go in this direction, but bring in NPCs as an X factor when you're fighting other people.
Well, that happened to Usher Khan in the war zone with the Serum NPCs that attacked the Fortizar, and honestly, I think it's cool from an RP perspective, but it was a giant disadvantage, because you have these giant NPC forces that reinforce the Fortizar, then all of a sudden, like everybody in the war zone shows up to the hull timer. It's basically dooming one side. Like, Usher Khan lost structures because of the NPCs that attacked them earlier. This Fortizar that they attacked yesterday actually has been hit by Blooded Dreadnoughts in high sec because of RP events. So NPCs are something that you sometimes see when RP storylines are going on. So what you just said has exactly happened before. And right. I think it's not always fair to the players, because who could have seen like a dev calling it a big NPC force, right? Yeah,
I'm convinced I'm going to be hanging around you, Arcia, pretty soon, because the gameplay that you guys are doing there is.
I do know that when the Serum NPCs hit all the Usher Khan structures in the war zone, I felt really bad for them, because it kind of wasn't fair, even if it was really cool from an RP's perspective.
Yeah. Well, thanks for telling us about that war, and we will keep tabs.
Keep you updated if it continues on, if they escalate.
Yeah, and if you guys have smaller engagements or smaller wars or smaller grudge matches that are going on, let Talking in Stations know. We'd like to highlight them and show some footage and really cover more than just the big wars. That would be great.
Definitely send me information on wars that are happening in high, low, and null sec between smaller entities. I would like to shine some lights on them.
Awesome. I like that. Outside the blocks. All right. Our next thing is that we have a special presentation here from a friend of ours, Silva, who's going to show us what the super capitals look like. This is a little added to the show here. What super capital effects look like on CC since he's on there now. We'll get that up in just a second, but we want to make this late announcement here. The fun fact that module on the super capital ships, that the recloner, we'll call it, can actually be used while tethered. Which, at first it sounds broken, right? Because that means that you have a mobile recloning stage that is invulnerable. If you tether up and you have a super capital, it's safe, right? And then you have a recloning spot. So it's really kind of a moving spawn point. And if you have a structure, it becomes invulnerable. That's kind of crazy. Let's have a look at what it looks like now. Are you able to hear us, Silva?
Yeah. So I'm just going to warp and pod myself here really quickly. So you have to take the booster ahead of it, and you have to be in fleet and local. And the booster lasts about 6 hours.
You might need to put on headphones. But go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I've got my speakers on.
So 6 hours, that's, well, these days that might not make it through the entire fight, but, well, 6 hours game time. So definitely you'll make it through a fight.
Yeah, and so the module's active, like you just have the module active on the super carrier. There's no, it's only like maybe like a 2-second delay before allowing you to not dock. However, you are able to use it while tethered. And it uses 20 fuel blocks every time a ship re-clones. So when someone gets potted, then that's when those 20 fuel blocks are consumed. So my capsule's been reached here, and now I arrive back in a pod right next to the super carrier.
So you're picking this out of the bay of the super carrier ship?
Yeah. And there's the rats making no effect. And voila, I've got a new saber now. I mean, this does open up some complications with, you know, leaving your hangar open, and you're going to instill a lot of trust. So if you have a kind of spy or AWACS or all in organizations, you might try and remove some of these more expensive ships from super carriers. I'm not quite sure the mechanics of how this is all going to play out, but it does open up some fun tricks.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think it was a little blurry when we saw it, but it essentially looks like the video. You reconstruct the frame of the ship, and then it, with a yellow burst of light, gets reconstituted.
Yeah.
So that's just whenever you take a ship out of a maintenance bay, so it would be the same for like an Orca.
Oh, sorry, really? I didn't know that.
Is that, and I'm asking, is that the case?
No, I don't know. Typically, you just arrive in the ship when you...
yeah, no, normally, but like it's a new thing. I was wondering, or is that just... So it's just for super carriers when you take a ship out now?
I think it's only when you use the instance of when you're pulling it out of the ship, like through the cloning section. I'll put the ship back in there and see what happens. Yeah, it looks like it happened again, so maybe it's just unique for super carrier.
If you grab it from like a regular capital or like an Orca or something, does that happen?
I'll turn off the clone bay effect. Maybe it'll be the same. Maybe it'll be still the same.
Well, no, the point is, will they give that effect to grabbing a ship out of a maintenance bay for everybody? Or will it just be special to this occasion where you've taken the booster?
The fact only happens with the super carrier and the drug, says Rubicon.
Okay, so it's special. Yeah, and it's random. It looks like it... There, we got a better view of it there. Can you do it one more time? Just... Looks like the graphics are coming in better.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just go a little closer.
So you can use this mothership, sorry, this supercarrier, while it's tethered, you can do this.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty big clue on what's going to happen with these things. It's almost like these have become... Oh, yeah, that looks great. Look at that. It's like got yellow dust going everywhere. Very nice. Well, I thought you would have to risk the mothership, you know, keep it untethered to be able to use this, but nope.
Hey, keep in mind, this is CC. The changes aren't final, and I'm sure they'll be looking for feedback in the coming weeks before the update actually comes out. I just hope, like, it'll be... I don't know how it's going to affect in tie-dye, because typically if you spawn in a tie-dye system for Fortizar and then you get a ship and then you undock, that takes up a lot of time, so I don't know if this process is going to be quicker.
Okay, let's see that spawn just one last time. That was pretty cool. And is it a different menu? It is...
Can you get in the nester? I want to see the bigger ship. Get reconstituted. Oh wow, look at that. That looks really good with the battleship.
Still a few graphic glitches, probably. The Saber looks like just slick.
So you can repetitively come back until the supercarrier runs out of ships, right?
Yeah, and there's no delay in when you get potted. I mean, I was sitting on the undock here for a few minutes, but there doesn't seem to be a delay at the present time.
So, like, could somebody just keep constantly running out with, like, the STs and supplying supercarriers with ship? Or, no, because they'd be unpackaged. They'd be packaged.
But can't they reach into the structure anyway? Aren't they able to?
Well, you could have the ships in the you could have the ships in the structure very easily. I just wonder around the mechanics of, is it supposed to cut down on you know, typically you get potted, you go back to your capital system away from, in at least a null setting, you're going away from where the fight actually is. So you're getting removed from the grid, you're going out of the tie-dyed node into your capital system, reshipping, getting bridged back in or jumping back in, and that takes up time. At least this way, maybe you're kind of cutting down on the process, or you're not having to deal with the undocking and docking mechanics within tie-dye, but I don't know how much quicker it's going to be.
Well, in this war that we're watching now, the initiative decided to move their death clone back up to NPC Fountain, away from the front, which was NPC, or which was Delve. And that seemed to be a big deal. But this totally negates that, right? Because you can bring your respawn point with you now while you're in combat and keep it in the field as long as you need it, as long as you have a supercarrier. So the idea of being potted and sent home just isn't part of a strategy anymore with this sort of a thing. But, you know, you have to be...
And keep in mind, you're only really going to roughly fit, like, maybe 10 battleships in this, 9 battleships, because battleships go up to, like, about 512 KM3.
But the question is, could this thing replenish its ship supply? Is there a way for it to do that?
You'd have to, like, drag them with, like, a bowhead or a carrier or something and put the ships from the bowhead or a carrier. I guess if you're like tethered like this, you could have a bowhead on dock with a bunch of ships and bring it to the carrier.
Well, I'm wondering if that Fortizar had a bunch of ships in it, could you just keep supplying? And
I think absolutely right. You just keep undocking a carrier, burns over, puts ships in the supercarrier.
Yeah. Or you could trade. I don't know. Anyway. This is interesting. Definitely a lot of strategy to think through. I'm probably not the person to be doing that, but there's a lot of theory crafting that you could do with how these things could do. Now that we know they can be tethered, and how it looks with the filament lasting 6 hours, that's plenty of time to cover you for the remainder of the fight. That's not tie-dye time. That's 6 hours game time. So if it is tie-dye, that's 60 hours basically. In other words, you're not going to run out. You take it once, you're not going to run out.
I may have done my math wrong here. It looks like it's closer to. I was just doing a converter. At least it's at least 11 hours, maybe.
Of actual in-game time. So if tie-dye hits, I wonder if it gets stretched, right?
So
Yeah.
I can promise if I ever have to drag ships from with a carrier to a supercarrier every time I get there, I'm going to say, carrier has arrived.
I think the more practical application of this is like if you're actually deploying these off of a structure, or you're attacking a structure, or any instance where you're not like within reasonable range of a structure. You're able to, like, you need additional tackle, and the dictors usually die pretty damn quickly. You're able to reship those guys right on the field, as opposed to having to bring them from the outside or having to bring them from a structure inside the system.
Yeah, you can carry a lot of dictors in 5 million M3, right?
All right, McLeod's going to switch to a different view here about with the Orca. And this might be a surprise. Let's have a look here. We'll give him a few seconds to adjust, because he says the effect is the same with the Orca. By the way, Suitonia, do you have any further comments?
No, you guys are covering pretty well. It's pretty cool that they updated the effect for all ships, though, all SMA effects.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just any kind of SMB. So Orca, Dread, Carrier should be the same.
Oh, look at that.
Well, that's disappointing.
Well, not for people that don't. I think it's not. So it's not special to super carriers. This is what it looks like now when you take a ship out in space. And that actually...
Because it seemed like you just cloned back into a pod, and that taking the ship out has nothing to do with the clone bay.
Right. That's the actual trick. So that effect is introduced for removing a ship from clone bay. Thank you for checking that out for us.
No problem.
All right. Well, Suitonia, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Well, I just like to say that Event is they have a tournament in a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. I think it's November the 14th. So keep an eye on that. Check that out.
Where can people find info on that?
If they go to Eve-NT TV on Twitch or on Twitter, you can find out a lot more information. I could also put a link in the chat, maybe, if Matterall lets me.
Go for it.
All right. Well, he gets that in there. Thanks, Suitonia. So there it is. open.eve-nt.uk/alliances. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank Suitonia and Noraus, who had to leave earlier, Silva for showing us a demonstration of the supercarrier, and McLeod for engineering everything and also showing us the Orca there at the end. Thank you, guys. And Arcia, thanks for coming and telling us about the HiSec War and all this other stuff. And thank you guys for showing up today for Talking in Stations. We'll be back tomorrow with Talking in Stations Daily. And you can always find our stuff on YouTube. We're thinking, since this is going out to our podcast listeners, that we've heard many requests that people want more Talking in Stations on the podcast. So we're thinking of putting on the daily shows from now on. And we're working on that. We're also doing some work on our website so that it can be used in other ways too. So all that, stay tuned. We'll let you know how we update that. For now, I want to say again, thanks for everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time on Talking in Stations.